Well, glory be and mercy me, we've done it yet again. Here we are, daily walk in the graveyard. It's my birthday. Happy birthday to me. I did it. Also, happy Insurrection Day. Yeah. I feel like the only birthday that is now worse than mine is probably September 11th, right? Like, yeah, September 11th. Never forget. Happy birthday, by the way. Well, that's kind of how I feel. Oh, happy birthday, John Trump. Oh, there's Trump. Anyway, today's video, I wanted to talk about something that I actively and on purpose have avoided talking about, which is the pandemic, which is COVID-19, which is vaccinations, which is the anti-vaxxers and the skepticism surrounding all of it, right? Because my position has always been we should listen to the doctors, we should listen to the nurses. That's really what it is. That I've always been a touch sympathetic to the anti-vax people because their suspicions I have always felt are well warranted, right? Sure, there are those amongst them who are super in kooky loony town saying like COVID doesn't exist, this sort of thing, which I think that's bananas, bonkers, crazy, go nuts. Like, I think you got to be really, really way far off in the distance to be thinking that way. But I think it is correct to have a certain degree of skepticism towards these corporations, towards these governments who have in the past said things to us like, oh yeah, cigarettes are fine, right? Oh, cigarettes are totally fine, right? Have said things in the past to us like, oh, climate change, that's not really a big deal. The science isn't in, right? Oh, and they both sided as us for about 10 years, and they keep trying to do that to us over and over and over again. So I think there's some credibility to be had. The issue, of course, oh, and for full disclosure, I have been vaccinated, right? I took the vaccine. Why? Because the doctors and the nurses said, take the vaccine. And I was like, okay, doctor and nurse, whatever you say. And the thing that's always been missing from the conversation of suspicion towards corporations has been a whistleblower, right? It's one thing to be suspicious, it's one thing to speculate, but unless you actually have someone coming forward with hard evidence, with hard documentation, raising interesting questions, saying serious things and being able to back them up, in serious ways, then that's all it is. It's just speculation. Well, Joe Rogan had a Dr. Robert Malone on his podcast recently, the timing of which was absolutely perfect because 2 days before Dr. Malone was taken off Twitter. He was banned permanently. Since the recording of that podcast, YouTube has removed all elements of the interview that Joe Rogan had with Dr. Malone, calling it anti-vaxxing. And I need to be very clear about something here. It isn't anti-vaxxing. It isn't about being anti-vaccination. In fact, Dr. Robert Malone is one of the inventors of the NRA process of vaccination. This is what gives him such interesting credibility in the conversation, is that he is the definition of an insider in this conversation. And the corporate power structure has done everything it can in order to remove him from the conversation, remove him from Twitter, remove him from YouTube. Don't let him speak. Don't give him any platform whatsoever. And again, I've listened to the interview that he had with Rogan. I wouldn't call him an anti-vaxxer, right? It's pretty clear that he thinks the vaccine works. It's pretty clear that he thinks the vaccine is real. It's pretty clear that he supports vaccinations generally. His point, though, is why are we treating vaccination as the singular end-all, be-all thing to do? And that has definitely got me thinking, why are we doing that? Why are we treating it as if vaccination is the only thing? And you're seeing this begin to manifest itself in our politics in serious ways. Justin Trudeau, just yesterday, stood up and said that it's the anti-vaxxers' fault that we're in this situation, and even accused many of them of being racist. The classic Democratic statement, oh, they're a bunch of deplorables, this kind of a thing. He has said of these anti-vaxxers. And all the polls are showing that Canadians are completely fine with this idea of scapegoating the anti-vaxxers. But it's not quite accurate, is it? It's not the anti-vaxxers' fault that Omicron is surging currently. Omicron, in fact, in terms of transmission, sidesteps this particular vaccine. In terms of transmission, it doesn't really matter if you have the vaccine or not. Chances are good that you're going to get the Omicron variant anyway. Who is more to blame? I would argue that it's probably a political class that has refused to actually pursue all options when it comes to stymieing the spike or the flow of COVID, right? And why are they doing that? Well, they're doing that on behalf of the corporate power structure, right? Just like the CDC decision to lower the amount of isolation time to 5 days from 10, right? Cutting it in half. These decisions are being made not for the benefit of or the well-being of the populace, but they're being made for the benefit of a psychopath class who is completely fine with killing people for profit. That's what we are facing. And the anti-vaxxers have become a convenient scapegoat. Then, sure, you can create the argument or make the argument, and you would be accurate in doing so. You can say that, well, the people who are being hospitalized are the unvaccinated, and that's clogging up the system and causing lots of problems. Yeah, that's certainly the truth. I can't deny that. That's absolutely the case. But why haven't we been pursuing these other alternative ideas that have been put forward? And the answer, in my view, is very simple. Because vaccines are a big money-making operation, and other procedures and other medications and other things to pursue are not. It's very straightforward in my view, that at the end of the day, this is all about the money. And more importantly than that, it's about maintaining control and maintaining power. As long as we are pointing fingers at the anti-vaxxers, right, who are not responsible for the creation of this virus, who are not even responsible for the spreading of the Omicron virus, right? The situation that we are in, we would be in the similar situation in terms of transmission without the vaccine. Hospitalization may be a different story, but in terms of transmission. And so they've become a convenient way for politicians to deflect their responsibility to the populace. It has, instead of us standing up and saying with far more accuracy, hey, wait a minute, there are people in positions of power whose job it is to look out for the public interest and to organize the society so that we will be safe from such existential threats. And those people are elected officials. Like, has anyone noticed that these liberals have done nothing? Has anyone noticed that? That they haven't passed any other measure. They haven't instituted any kind of lockdown. They haven't instituted any kind of mandate. They've shrugged their shoulders and left it to the provinces. And here in Ontario especially, we are ruled by someone who is, I mean, you have to call him a boob at this point. And yet we're all supposed to be angry at the anti-vaxxers. They're the ones who are responsible for this. They're the reason this is continuing on. When, in my view, it's just fundamentally not true. It's just fundamentally not true. Was it the anti-vaxxers that created the Omicron variant in South Africa? Was it the anti-vaxxers that spread it throughout our society because they kept the borders open? Was it the anti-vaxxers that made it so that Omicron just simply sidestepped the vaccine completely? No. And of course we can have our disagreements with them, as we should, right? But we should also be asking ourselves, in very serious ways, how has it come to this? How has it come so that there are large segments of our society, enormous sections of our society, who are so mistrustful of the power structure, are so mistrustful of the doctors, of the corporate interests, the politicians, that they are willing to risk their own safety and their own lives over it? How is it that we have come to a point where we are so fractured as a people that we refuse to make the most mundane of sacrifices, simply getting a vaccine for the public good, caring more about our individual freedom and choice than the health and safety of the society? Those are interesting questions that we should be discussing, because then we might actually realize, oh yes, their mistrust is actually well warranted. They have good reasons to not believe what they're being told. They have good reasons to think that the ruling class is lying, as they have done constantly and repeatedly. And even if they are telling the truth now, well, it's a bit like the boy who cried wolf, isn't it? It's a bit like the boy who cried wolf. That if you consistently and constantly lie to the public over and over and over again, so that your buddies can keep making money from the lies, while you absolutely decimate people on a public health and safety issue, something like smoking is a good example, well then don't be too surprised that when you need them to follow you the most, such as during a pandemic, they're simply not going to. And instead of us as a populace realizing that the true villains of this narrative are the people who are selling us out to these lying corporations for money, while refusing to even consider other alternatives, which have been brought to the forefront now because of Dr. Robert Malone, instead of putting any kind of onus or any kind of blame on the political class that actively works to abandon us, we are pointing the fingers at the skeptics. We're pointing the fingers at the people asking the questions. We're pointing at the finger at the people who have had enough and are refusing to participate. And while I might not agree in the end with their decision for what they're doing, I choose to listen to the doctors and the nurses, as I've said before. It's very difficult for me to want to blame them more than someone like Justin Trudeau. And again, the political class finds a wedge to drive within the populace. If it's not an issue like abortion, if it's not an issue like identity politics, if it's not an issue like gun control, right? It's anything but class. And well, here's a good one. People are angry. People are upset. People are looking around for a scapegoat, and it's an easy one. It's a slam dunk. You can divide the populace and ensure they don't ever talk to one another and get together and realize that the people who have been fucking us over this entire time are the people who are in the positions of power. And we keep voting for them. And that's what's important. We keep voting for them. Perhaps we should stop. Well, speaking of stopping, here we are at the end of the video. Please like, please share, please subscribe. YouTube doesn't send this stuff around anymore. They're doing everything they can to put the boot on the back of leftist voices or alternative media. So if you don't share it, they don't see it. It is that simple. I got a Patreon down below. Think about donating. Even $1 would help. We have to support leftist voices as they are being suppressed, as we are being chased out of the conversation. Always remember, guys, you are a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. That means that you are just as valuable and important and valid as these billionaires. And they're spending a lot of money in the vain hope that you won't recognize it, you won't realize it. Don't let them. Rebel, revolt, repent. Good luck. We're gonna need it.